The phone rang at 2:47 a.m., and Brielle Thompson knew before answering that her life was about to break apart. She was in the middle of checking vitals on a patient when her cell phone vibrated against her hip. The number flashing across the screen was her mother's. Her mother never called during her night shifts at Mercy General Hospital. Never. Not in 12 years of Brielle working overnight as a registered nurse. Her hands trembled as she stepped into the hallway, away from the fluorescent lights and beeping monitors. "Mama?" The sound that came through the phone wasn't words. It was something primal, something that made Brielle's stomach drop to her feet. Crying. Deep, guttural sobbing that seemed to tear itself from her mother's chest. "Mama, what's wrong? Are you hurt? Is it Tasha? I can't do this anymore, Bri." Her mother's voice was shredded raw. "I can't carry this. I can't." "Carry what? Mama, you're scaring me." "Your father," the words choked off into another sob. "Oh God, Brielle. Your father." Brielle's heart seized. Her father had died when she was 8 years old. Tasha had been only 4. A car accident, they'd been told. Quick. Painless. He didn't suffer. That's what everyone said at the funeral, as if those words could fill the crater his absence had left in their lives. "What about Daddy?" Brielle whispered, though she suddenly wasn't sure she wanted to know. The silence stretched so long Brielle thought the call had dropped. Then her mother spoke, each word falling like a stone into dark water. "He didn't die in an accident." The hospital hallway tilted. Brielle pressed her palm against the cool wall, her nurse's scrubs suddenly feeling too tight, too hot. "What are you saying?" "I lied to you. I lied to both of you. For 24 years I lied." Brielle couldn't breathe. The hallway felt like it was closing in, the harsh lights burning her eyes. Somewhere behind her, a call button chimed. Someone needed help. But Brielle couldn't move. "Mama, where are you?" "I'm coming home." "No, don't. I needed you to know. I can't look at you anymore and keep this inside. It's killing me, Brielle. It's been killing me for 24 years. The line went dead. Brielle stared at her phone, her mind refusing to process what she'd just heard. Her father. The man whose smile she could barely remember. The man whose voice had faded from her memory until she wasn't sure if she was remembering him or just the stories people told about him. The man whose absence had shaped every single day of her life. Her legs gave out. She slid down the wall until she was sitting on the cold linoleum floor, her phone still clutched in her hand. "Brielle?" Dana Brooks appeared at the end of the hallway, concern etched across her face. Dana was newer to the night shift, only 6 months in, but she and Brielle had connected over shared lunch breaks and the particular exhaustion that came with working while the rest of the world slept. "Girl, you okay? I heard the call button and you weren't." She stopped when she saw Brielle's face. "Oh my God. What happened? I need to go home." Brielle's voice sounded strange to her own ears. Distant. Like it belonged to someone else. "Are you sure you can drive? You look like you're about to pass out." Brielle forced herself to stand, her legs shaking. "I have to go. My mother just told me everything I know about my father's death is a lie." Dana's eyes widened. She grabbed Brielle's arm, steadying her. Okay, let me talk to Dr. Ellis. You're not driving anywhere like this. Let me see if someone can cover the rest of your shift." 15 minutes later, Brielle was in her car, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tight her knuckles ached. The drive from the hospital to her mother's house in southeast Atlanta took 23 minutes. She made it in 17. The house was dark except for a single lamp in the living room window. The same house Brielle had grown up in. The same porch where her father used to sit on Sunday mornings, drinking coffee and reading the paper. The same driveway where he'd taught her to ride a bike. Or had he? How much of her memory was real? How much had she constructed from photographs and stories? Brielle sat in the car for a long moment, staring at that lit window. Behind it, her mother was awake. Waiting. Carrying a secret that had apparently been destroying her from the inside for more than 2 decades. The front door opened before Brielle could knock. Her mother stood in the doorway and Brielle barely recognized her. Lorraine Thompson had always been strong. Unbreakable. The woman who had raised 2 daughters alone, who had worked double shifts at the post office to keep them fed and clothed, who had never once complained about the hand life had dealt her. But the woman standing in the doorway looked shattered. Her eyes were swollen, her face blotchy from crying. She'd aged 10 years in the hours since Brielle had last seen her. "Mama." The word came out broken. Lorraine reached for her, and Brielle stepped into her mother's arms the way she had as a child. They stood like that in the doorway, holding each other while Lorraine cried into Brielle's shoulder. "I'm so sorry," Lorraine whispered. Baby, I'm so sorry. They moved inside. Brielle guided her mother to the couch, the same floral couch that had been there since Brielle was a teenager. Everything in this house was the same. Frozen in time. Like a museum dedicated to a man who maybe never existed the way they thought he did. Tell me. Brielle sat beside her mother, taking her hand. Tell me everything. Lorraine took a shuddering breath. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Your father didn't die in a car accident. He died in a correctional facility. He was in prison, Brielle. He'd been there for 3 years when he died. The words didn't make sense. Brielle's brain tried to process them, tried to fit them into the narrative she'd been living her whole life, but they wouldn't fit. Prison? For what? He was wrongly convicted. Lorraine's voice cracked. He didn't do what they said he did. He was innocent, but nobody believed him. Not the police, not the lawyers, not even half our own family. And I. She covered her face with her hands. I was so scared. So angry. I believed the evidence over my own husband. I thought he'd betrayed me. Betrayed you girls. And when he died in there, I couldn't face the truth. So I lied. I told everyone it was a car accident. I had a funeral with a closed casket and I let everyone believe he died a free man. Brielle felt like she was drowning. What was he accused of? Theft. Embezzlement from the construction company where he worked. $30,000. They said he stole it to gamble, that he had debts. But your father never gambled. Never. He wouldn't even buy a lottery ticket. Lorraine looked at Brielle with eyes full of decades of pain. I should have believed him. He begged me to believe him and I turned my back on him. I kept you girls away from him because I was ashamed. Because I was afraid of what people would think. And then he died and I never got to tell him I was sorry. I never got to tell him I finally believed him. Finally believed him? Brielle's voice was sharp. What do you mean finally? About 6 months after he died, one of his co-workers came forward. Said his supervisor had been stealing from the company for years and had set your father up to take the fall. By then it was too late. Your father was already gone. And I had to live with what I'd done. With what I'd taken from you and Tasha. So I lied. I created a father you could be proud of instead of one you'd be ashamed of. We would never have been ashamed of him. The words exploded out of Brielle. He was innocent. You just said he was innocent. But I didn't know that then. And by the time I did, he was dead and I'd already told the lie. And every day after that, the lie got bigger. Harder to take back. Until it became the truth and I couldn't remember how to tell you the real story anymore. Brielle stood up, pacing the small living room. Her mind was racing, trying to absorb this impossible information. Her father hadn't died in a car crash. He died in prison. Alone. Abandoned by his wife and unable to see his daughters. Convicted of a crime he didn't commit. Does Tasha know? Brielle asked suddenly. Lorraine shook her head. I couldn't call her. I knew if I told her, she'd never forgive me. She already barely speaks to me. It was true. Tasha had been distant from their mother for years, though Brielle had never fully understood why. There had always been a coldness between them, a wall that Brielle couldn't break down no matter how hard she tried to keep the family together. She deserves to know, Brielle said. I know. But Brielle, I need you to understand something. I'm telling you this now because I'm sick. Cancer. Stage 3. The doctors say I have maybe a year, maybe less. Lorraine's voice was steady now, resigned. I couldn't die with this secret. I couldn't leave this world without you knowing the truth about your father. He was a good man. He loved you girls more than anything. And I destroyed his memory because I was too proud and too scared to stand by him. Brielle's legs gave out again. She sank back onto the couch, her hand finding her mother's. Cancer. Her mother was dying. And with this confession, she'd just blown apart everything Brielle thought she knew about her life, her family, her history. We're going to get through this, Brielle heard herself say, though she had no idea how. All of it. The cancer, the truth about Daddy, everything. We're going to face it together. But even as she said the words, she wondered if they were true. Because somewhere across town, Tasha was sleeping, unaware that tomorrow her world would shatter just like Brielle's had tonight. And Brielle had no idea how they would ever put the pieces back together. Brielle didn't sleep. She sat in her mother's living room until the sun came up, watching the shadows shift across the walls, thinking about a man she'd never really known. At 6:30 a.m. she finally left. Her mother had fallen asleep on the couch, exhausted from tears and confession. Brielle had covered her with a blanket, kissed her forehead, and promised to come back after she talked to Tasha. The drive to Tasha's apartment felt longer than it was. Brielle's mind kept spinning through memories, trying to separate what was real from what had been constructed. She remembered being 8 years old, standing at a funeral, staring at a closed casket. She'd asked her mother why they couldn't see Daddy one more time. Her mother had said the accident had been too terrible, that it was better to remember him the way he was. Now Brielle understood. There had been no body to view because her father had been buried in a prison cemetery, far from family and home. Tasha lived in a small apartment complex near the elementary school where she taught 3rd grade. Brielle had been there maybe 3 times in the past year. Their relationship had become strained over the years, though Brielle could never pinpoint exactly when or why. Tasha had always been angry about something, always holding Brielle at arm's length. Brielle knocked on the door at 7:15 a.m., knowing Tasha would be awake, getting ready for school. The door opened and Tasha stood there in a robe, a coffee mug in her hand, her natural hair wrapped in a silk scarf. When she saw Brielle, her expression shifted from confusion to annoyance. "What are you doing here? Don't you work nights? You should be asleep. I need to talk to you. It's about Mama." Tasha's face softened slightly. "Is she okay? Can I come in?" Tasha stepped aside, letting Brielle enter the small apartment. It was neat and organized, with children's artwork on the walls and a stack of grading papers on the coffee table. A life Brielle barely knew anything about because Tasha never let her in. "What's going on?" Tasha sat on the edge of her couch, defensive. Brielle didn't know how to say it. There was no gentle way to tear apart someone's understanding of their own history, so she just started talking. "Mama called me last night. She told me something about Daddy. About how he died." Tasha's expression hardened. "I don't want to talk about him." "Tasha, you need to hear this." "No, I don't. You know what? I'm tired of you always trying to fix everything, Brielle. Tired of you playing mediator between me and Mama. Tired of you acting like you're the only one holding this family together." The words hit Brielle like a slap. "That's not what I'm doing." "Yes, it is. It's what you've always done. Ever since Daddy died, you've been trying to be the parent. Trying to make everything okay. But you can't fix everything, and I'm tired of pretending like you can. He didn't die in a car accident." Brielle's voice cut through Tasha's anger like ice. Tasha froze. "What? Daddy didn't die in a car accident. That's what Mama called to tell me. She lied to us. For 24 years she lied." The color drained from Tasha's face. She set her coffee mug down carefully, her hands shaking. "What are you talking about?" Brielle told her everything. Their father's arrest. The wrongful conviction. The 3 years in prison. His death in a correctional facility. Their mother's decision to create a different story, a cleaner story, one without shame. With every word, Tasha's face grew harder. By the time Brielle finished, Tasha was standing, her body rigid with fury. "Get out. Tasha. Get out of my apartment. Now. You're angry, I understand, but we need to." "Need to what?" Tasha's voice was shaking. "Need to forgive her? Need to understand why she took our father away from us twice? Once when he was alive and again when he died? No, absolutely not." She was scared. She made a mistake. A mistake. Tasha laughed, but there was no humor in it. "She let us believe a lie our entire lives. She let us mourn a man who died alone in a prison cell, thinking his own family had abandoned him. That's not a mistake, Brielle. That's a betrayal. She's sick." The words came out quiet, desperate. "She has cancer. Stage 3. She told me because she doesn't want to die with this secret." For a moment, Tasha's face crumbled. Brielle saw the scared little girl her sister used to be, the one who had clung to Brielle's hand at their father's funeral, not understanding why Daddy wasn't coming home. But then Tasha's expression hardened again. "I don't care. She should have told us the truth 24 years ago. Or 20 years ago. Or 10. Or last year. She had 1,000 chances to tell us who our father really was, and she chose the lie every single time. Tasha, please. No. I'm done. I'm done with her, and honestly, I'm done with you too. You always take her side. You always make excuses for her. Well, I can't do it anymore. I can't pretend we're some happy family when everything we were built on was a lie. We're sisters," Brielle said, tears streaming down her face. "That's not a lie. That's real." "Is it?" Tasha's voice broke. "How do I know what's real anymore? How do I know what else she lied about? What you've lied about?" "I never lied to you. You knew Mama was keeping secrets. You had to. You were always so protective of her, always defending her. You must have known something was wrong." "I didn't. I swear I didn't." But Tasha was already walking to the door, opening it. "I need you to leave. I need to process this alone. I can't look at you right now and not see her. Brielle walked to the door, her heart breaking. At the threshold, she turned back. I love you, Tasha. And Daddy loved you too. More than anything. Whatever else Mama lied about, that part was true. He loved us. Don't, Tasha whispered. Don't talk to me about his love when I was too young to even remember him. When the only memories I have are fake stories from a woman who betrayed him. Just, go. The door closed in Brielle's face. She stood in the hallway for a long moment, listening to the sound of her sister crying on the other side of the door. She wanted to knock again, to force Tasha to let her in, to fix this the way she'd been fixing things for their family her entire life. But maybe Tasha was right. Maybe Brielle couldn't fix everything. Maybe some things were too broken. Brielle drove home in a daze. Her own apartment felt foreign when she walked in. She'd lived there for 6 years, but suddenly it didn't feel like home. Nothing felt like home anymore. Her phone buzzed. A text from Camille. Girl, where are you? You were supposed to meet me for breakfast 20 minutes ago. Brielle had completely forgotten. She and Camille had plans to meet before Camille headed to court. They'd been best friends since college, and Camille was the only person outside her family that Brielle talked to regularly. She dialed Camille's number. Brie? Where are you? I'm at the cafe with a plate of French toast getting cold. Can you come to my apartment? Brielle's voice cracked. I need you. Camille didn't ask questions. I'm on my way. 20 minutes later, Camille was sitting on Brielle's couch, still in her court suit, holding Brielle while she cried and told her everything. When Brielle finished, Camille sat back, her lawyer mind already working. Okay, let's break this down. Your father was wrongly convicted of embezzlement. A coworker eventually came forward to say he was framed. Was there ever an exoneration? An appeal? I don't know. Mama didn't say. She just said he was innocent and that someone else confessed to setting him up. Then that's where we start. Camille pulled out her phone. We need to find the court records. Find out exactly what happened, what the evidence was, whether there was ever any formal exoneration. If your father was innocent, his name should be cleared. It's the least he deserves. Camille, he's been dead for 24 years. So, justice doesn't have an expiration date, Brie. And if we can prove he was wrongly convicted, it might help your family heal. It might help Tasha understand that your mother's lie came from shame and fear, not malice. Brielle wanted to believe that was true. But right now, sitting in her apartment with her life in pieces around her, she couldn't imagine how any of them would ever heal from this. There's more, Brielle said quietly. Mama has cancer. She's dying. Camille closed her eyes. Oh, Brie. She says maybe a year. Maybe less. Then we don't have much time. Camille squeezed Brielle's hand. We need to find the truth about your father, and we need to help your family forgive each other before it's too late. Can you do that? Brielle thought about Tasha's face, hard and angry and hurt. She thought about her mother, carrying guilt like a stone for 24 years. She thought about a man she barely remembered, who had died alone and wrongly accused. I have to try, Brielle said. Because what else was there? Her family was falling apart, but they were still her family. And if there was even a chance they could find their way back to each other, she had to take it. Even if it meant uncovering truths that would hurt even more than the lies. Brielle showed up for her shift at Mercy General that night even though she'd barely slept in 48 hours. She needed the routine, needed the distraction of saving other people's lives when her own felt beyond saving. Dana found her in the supply closet at 11 p.m., staring at a shelf of bandages without really seeing them. Hey. Dana touched her shoulder gently. Dr. Ellis told me what happened. About your family emergency. You sure you should be here? I'm fine. Brielle, you're standing in a closet staring at gauze. You're not fine. The kindness in Dana's voice broke something loose in Brielle's chest. She turned around, and Dana pulled her into a hug without asking permission. My dad's in prison, Dana said quietly. Has been since I was 16. Armed robbery. He's guilty, he did it, but that doesn't make it easier. The shame of it. The way people look at you when they find out. The way you start to wonder if you're broken too, just by association. Brielle pulled back, looking at Dana with new eyes. I didn't know. Most people don't. I don't talk about it. But when Dr. Ellis mentioned your family situation, I thought, I don't know. I thought maybe it would help to know you're not alone. Whatever you're dealing with, you're not alone. Thank you, Brielle whispered. They worked the shift together, and Dana's presence, her understanding, made it bearable. By the time 7 a.m. came and Brielle was driving home in the early morning light, she felt like maybe she could face what came next. Camille had called her twice during the night. The second voicemail said, "Found something. Call me when you're off." Brielle called from her car. "Tell me you got some sleep," Camille said by way of greeting. "Tell me you found something useful." Camille sighed. "I found the court records. Your father was convicted in 1999 of embezzling $30,000 from Hammond Construction Company. He maintained his innocence throughout the trial. The evidence against him was pretty damning: forged checks with his signature, withdrawals that corresponded to his work schedule, testimony from his supervisor that your father had gambling debts. But he didn't gamble." "I know." "Here's the thing: 2 years into his sentence, another employee at Hammond Construction, a guy named Leonard Hayes, came forward and said the supervisor, Richard Hammond, had been embezzling for years and had framed your father. But by the time Hayes came forward, the supervisor had died of a heart attack. There was no one left to prosecute, and your father's conviction was never overturned." "Why not?" Brielle's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Without Hammond alive to testify or face charges, the DA's office said there wasn't enough new evidence to warrant overturning the conviction. They did note Hayes' statement in the file, but legally your father died a convicted felon." "That's not right." "No, it's not. But that's the system. It doesn't always care about right and wrong. It cares about evidence and procedure." Camille paused. "There's more. I found the death certificate. Your father died of a heart attack in the prison infirmary. He was 33 years old, Brie. The report notes he'd been under significant stress and had been denied multiple requests for contact with his family." 33. Her father had been 33. Younger than Brielle was now. He'd died young, alone, and branded a criminal. "Mama said she kept us away from him," Brielle said. She was ashamed. She thought he was guilty. Maybe she did. Or maybe she was scared. Maybe she didn't know how to explain to 2 little girls why their daddy was in prison. Fear makes people do terrible things, Brie. It doesn't excuse what she did, but it might explain it. Brielle arrived at her apartment and sat in the car, unable to make herself go inside. "What do we do now?" "We go through your mother's things. If she kept anything from that time, letters, documents, photos, we need to see it. We need to understand the full story before we can figure out how to help your family heal. Tasha won't talk to me. She told me to leave and hasn't answered any of my calls. Give her time. She's processing. What your mother told you, it's not the kind of thing you absorb overnight." Camille's voice softened. "When can you go to your mother's house?" "Today. She's at a doctor's appointment this afternoon, but I have a key." "Then let's meet there. 2 o'clock. We'll go through everything together." Brielle finally dragged herself inside, took a shower, and tried to sleep. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw her father's face. Or at least, the face from the photographs. A smiling man with kind eyes, holding a baby Brielle on his shoulders. A man who looked nothing like a criminal. At 1:45 p.m., Brielle pulled up to her mother's house. Camille's car was already in the driveway. "You ready for this?" Camille asked as Brielle let them inside. "No. But let's do it anyway." They started in the attic. Lorraine had always been a keeper of things: boxes of old clothes, holiday decorations, school projects from when Brielle and Tasha were children. But in the back corner, covered by a dusty sheet, Brielle found a box she'd never seen before. It was labeled in her mother's handwriting, "Tommy." Brielle's hands shook as she pulled it down. Camille came to stand beside her. "You want me to open it?" Camille asked gently. Brielle shook her head. She needed to do this herself. Inside the box was a life. Her father's life, preserved in paper and photographs and objects. There were letters, dozens of them, all addressed to Lorraine, all from a correctional facility. There were legal documents, newspaper clippings about the trial. And beneath all of it, wrapped in tissue paper, there was a small jewelry box. Brielle opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a simple gold wedding band and a piece of paper folded into a tiny square. She unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was shaky, desperate. "Lorraine, I'm running out of time and out of hope. The doctors say my heart is weak. The stress of this place is killing me, but what's really killing me is knowing you don't believe me. I understand why you don't. The evidence looks bad. But I swear on everything I love, on our daughters, I didn't do this. Hammond set me up because I was about to report him for fraud. He destroyed me to save himself. I know you won't bring the girls to see me. Maybe that's for the best. I don't want them to see me like this in this place. But please tell them I love them. Tell them their father fought until the end to come home to them. Tell them I was a good man who got caught in a bad situation. And Lorraine, if you ever loved me at all, please believe me. I need someone to believe me before I die. Forever yours, Tommy." The letter was dated 2 weeks before his death. Brielle couldn't breathe. She handed the letter to Camille and started going through the others. There were at least 50 letters, all from the first 3 years of his sentence. Her father had written every week, begging his wife to believe him, begging to see his daughters, begging for someone to investigate Hammond. And in a folder at the bottom of the box, Brielle found her mother's response. Just one letter, dated 6 months after their father's death. Tommy, you're gone and I can finally write the words I couldn't say when you were alive. I believe you. God forgive me, I believe you. Leonard Hayes came forward and told the truth about Hammond, and I know now that you were innocent. I know you died thinking I'd abandoned you, thinking your daughters had forgotten you. The truth is I never stopped loving you. I was just too scared and proud to stand by you when you needed me most. I can't bring you back. I can't undo the shame I put on our girls by telling them you died in a car accident instead of in prison fighting for your innocence. All I can do is live with this guilt and pray that somehow, someday you forgive me. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Lorraine. Brielle's tears fell onto the paper, smudging ink that was decades old. She knew, Brielle whispered. She knew he was innocent and she still kept lying to us. For 24 years she knew the truth and chose the lie. She was drowning in guilt, Camille said quietly. Sometimes guilt is so heavy it paralyzes you. The longer you wait to tell the truth, the harder it becomes. That doesn't make it right. No, it doesn't. But maybe it makes her human. Brielle looked around the attic at the box of her father's life. All these years it had been here. Her mother had kept everything, evidence of her betrayal and evidence of her regret. She'd lived with this weight every single day. We need to show this to Tasha, Brielle said. Are you sure? This might make things worse before they get better. She deserves to know Daddy never stopped fighting to get back to us. She deserves to know he loved us until the end. Brielle carefully packed everything back into the box. And she deserves to decide for herself whether to forgive Mama or not. That's not my choice to make. They carried the box downstairs just as Lorraine's car pulled into the driveway. Lorraine walked in, saw them standing there with the box, and her face crumbled. You found it, she whispered. Why didn't you ever show us this? Brielle asked. Why keep it hidden? Because every time I looked at it, I saw proof of what I'd done. How I'd failed him. Failed you. I couldn't bear to look at it, but I couldn't throw it away either. Lorraine sank onto the couch, suddenly looking every one of her 58 years and more. I thought if I could just take it to my grave, you'd never have to carry the weight I've carried. You could keep believing he died quickly, painlessly, surrounded by love instead of alone in a prison cell because of me. That wasn't your choice to make, Mama, Brielle said, but her voice was gentler now. We had a right to know who he really was. We had a right to mourn him properly. I know that now. Lorraine looked up at her daughter with red-rimmed eyes. Is Tasha ever going to forgive me? Brielle didn't know how to answer that, because she wasn't sure she'd forgiven her mother yet either. 3 days passed with no word from Tasha. Brielle called every morning and every night, leaving voicemails that went unanswered. She texted. She even drove by Tasha's apartment twice, but her sister's car was never there. Brielle spent those days in a strange limbo, working her night shifts at the hospital and spending her days with her mother, going through the box of their father's belongings piece by piece. They read every letter together, and with each one, Brielle watched her mother crack a little more. He was so young, Lorraine said on the third day, holding a photograph of Thomas Thompson at age 30. He was standing in front of the house they still lived in, paint on his hands, a smile on his face. I forgot how young we both were. How scared I was. I was 26 with 2 babies and a husband in prison. I didn't know how to survive that. So you erased him instead, Brielle said. It wasn't an accusation anymore, just a fact. I thought I was protecting you girls. I thought if I could just create a different story, a cleaner story, you wouldn't have to carry the shame. But all I did was take him away from you twice. Lorraine set the photo down carefully. Your father used to talk about you all the time. How smart you were, how protective you were of Tasha even though you were barely 4 years older. He called you his little warrior. Brielle's throat tightened. I don't remember him calling me that. You were 8 when he died. Most of your memories of him are from before he went to prison. The good years. Lorraine smiled sadly. He loved watching you two play together. Tasha would follow you everywhere, and you'd hold her hand like you were guiding her through the world. You were always trying to keep her safe. I still am, Brielle whispered. But I don't think she wants me to anymore. On the 4th day, Brielle went back to work and found Dana waiting for her in the break room with 2 cups of coffee. You look terrible, Dana said bluntly. Thank you. That's exactly what I needed to hear. I'm serious. When's the last time you slept more than 3 hours? Brielle couldn't remember. The nightmares had started dreams where she was 8 years old again, standing at her father's funeral, but when the casket opened, it was empty. She'd wake up gasping, her face wet with tears. I'm fine, Brielle lied. No, you're not. And that's okay. You don't have to be fine right now. Dana sat down, gesturing for Brielle to do the same. I talked to my mom yesterday. Told her about what you're going through. She wanted me to tell you something. What? She said the worst part about my dad being in prison wasn't the shame or the anger. It was the not knowing. Not knowing what really happened, not knowing if he was okay, not knowing if he thought about us. She said the truth was painful, but the not knowing was torture. Dana reached across the table and squeezed Brielle's hand. Your mama gave you the truth. It came late and it came with a lot of hurt, but at least now you know. You know your father fought for you. You know he loved you. That's something. Brielle held on to those words through the shift. When she got home at 7 a.m., exhausted and emotionally drained, there was a car parked in front of her apartment building that she didn't recognize. And sitting on the steps, looking just as exhausted as Brielle felt, was Tasha. Brielle's heart lurched. She approached slowly, afraid her sister would bolt. Hi, Brielle said carefully. Hi. Tasha's voice was hoarse, like she'd been crying. Can we talk? Yes, of course. Come upstairs. They rode the elevator in silence. Inside Brielle's apartment, Tasha stood in the middle of the living room like she didn't know where to put herself. I'm sorry, Tasha said abruptly. For shutting you out. For blaming you for Mama's lies. That wasn't fair. You were hurt. You're allowed to be hurt. I'm still hurt. I'm so angry I can barely breathe sometimes. But I'm also... Tasha's voice broke. I'm sad. I'm so sad, Bri. We lost him. We lost Daddy and we didn't even know we lost him. We thought he just died, but he was taken from us. And then Mama took him from us again by lying about who he was. Brielle moved toward her sister, and this time when she reached out, Tasha let herself be pulled into a hug. They stood there holding each other, crying for a father they barely remembered and a childhood that had been built on lies. Mama found his letters, Brielle said when they finally pulled apart. He wrote to her every week for 3 years. He never stopped fighting to prove his innocence, and he never stopped loving us. I know. Mama called me yesterday. Told me about the box. I didn't answer, but I listened to the voicemail about 50 times. Tasha wiped her eyes. I need to see them. The letters. I need to know what he said. Come on. We'll go to Mama's house together. An hour later, they were sitting in their mother's living room, the box between them. Lorraine was at another doctor's appointment. The cancer treatments were starting, and she'd be gone most of the day. Tasha read every letter, her face cycling through grief, anger, and something that looked like wonder. He talked about me, she said softly, holding a letter dated a month before his death. He said I was going to be a teacher someday because I was always trying to teach my dolls to read. How did he know that? I was 4 years old. Mama must have written to him about us, even if she didn't bring us to visit, Brielle said. She must have told him what we were doing, who we were becoming. Then why did she lie about how he died? If she was still connected to him, still sharing our lives with him, why make up the car accident story? Was a good question. One Brielle had been asking herself for days. The answer came from an unexpected source. There was a knock on the door. Brielle opened it to find Simone Patterson standing on the porch. Miss Simone had lived next door for as long as Brielle could remember. She was older now, her hair completely gray, but her eyes were still sharp and kind. I heard you girls were here, Miss Simone said. I have something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you years ago. They invited her in. Miss Simone sat in the armchair their mother usually occupied and looked at both of them with something like regret. I knew your father, she began. Before he went to prison we were neighbors and friends. I knew he was innocent. He told me what was happening at his job, how his supervisor was embezzling and how Tommy was gathering evidence to report him. I told him to be careful, that men like Richard Hammond didn't go down easy. But Tommy was an honest man. He believed in doing the right thing. What happened? Tasha asked. Hammond found out Tommy was investigating him. So Hammond set him up first. Forged documents, planted evidence, made it look like Tommy was the thief. By the time anyone realized the truth, it was too late. Tommy was convicted, and Hammond died of a heart attack before he could be charged. Miss Simone's hands trembled in her lap. Your mama came to me after Tommy died. She was destroyed. Not just by his death but by the guilt. She'd believed the lies about him. She kept you girls away from him because she was ashamed. And then when the truth came out, she couldn't face what she'd done. So she lied to us instead, Brielle said. She was drowning, baby. Drowning in grief and guilt and shame. I told her to tell you girls the truth, that you deserved to know your father was innocent. But she said she couldn't. Said it would hurt you more to know he died alone in prison than to think he died quickly in an accident. I disagreed, but it wasn't my place to tell you. I should have anyway. I should have told you years ago that your father was a good man who got caught in a bad situation. Miss Simone reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope. Tommy gave this to me the last time I visited him about a month before he died. He asked me to give it to you girls when you were old enough to understand. I was waiting for the right time, but I don't think there is a right time. I think you just need to know. She handed the envelope to Brielle. It was addressed to my daughters. Brielle's hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a letter in her father's handwriting. To my beautiful girls, by the time you read this I'll be gone. I want you to know that every day I spent away from you was the hardest day of my life. I want you to know that I fought with everything I had to prove my innocence and come home to you. I want you to know that I loved you from the moment you were born until the moment I stopped breathing. I know your mama. I know she's strong, but I also know she's proud. I'm afraid she won't tell you the truth about what happened to me. She might tell you I died a different way, a better way. If she does, please don't be angry with her. She's carrying so much pain and she's trying to protect you the only way she knows how. Here's what I need you to understand. What happened to me wasn't fair, but it also wasn't the end of my story. My story ends with you. Two smart, strong, beautiful girls who are going to change the world. Don't let my mistakes or the mistakes of others define you. Don't let anger or bitterness take root. Be better than this situation. Be better than me. Love each other. Take care of each other. And forgive your mama. She did the best she could with an impossible situation. I love you both more than words can say. You were my reason for fighting and you'll always be my reason for everything. Your daddy, Thomas Thompson. The letter fell from Brielle's hands. Tasha picked it up, read it, and started to cry deep, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. He knew, Tasha choked out. He knew Mama was going to lie, and he asked us to forgive her anyway. He loved her, Miss Simone said softly. Even after everything, he loved her. That's the kind of man he was. Brielle and Tasha sat together on the couch, holding the letter between them, crying for a father who had been taken too soon and a mother who had been trying to carry an impossible burden alone. When Lorraine came home an hour later, exhausted from her treatment, she found all three of them in the living room, her daughters, and the neighbor who had kept her secret for 24 years. Mama, Tasha said, and it was the first time she'd called her that in years. We need to talk. And for the first time in 24 years they finally did. The conversation lasted 4 hours. Lorraine sat in her armchair while Brielle and Tasha sat on the couch across from her, and Miss Simone sat beside Lorraine like a silent witness. For the first time in their lives, Lorraine told her daughters everything. She told them about the early years of her marriage to their father. How they'd met at a church picnic when they were 19, how he'd courted her for 2 years before proposing. How they'd been so in love it felt like nothing could touch them. She told them about the fear that had consumed her when he was arrested. How she truly believed he was guilty at first because the evidence was so convincing. How she'd been terrified of what people would think, how they'd judge her and her daughters. I was weak, Lorraine said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. I chose my pride over my husband. I chose what other people thought over the man I'd promised to stand by. And when he died before I could make it right, I couldn't face what I'd done. So I created a lie I could live with. But you couldn't live with it, Brielle said gently. That's why you told us now. Because the lie was killing you too. Lorraine nodded. Every birthday, every holiday, every milestone I thought about him. I thought about how he was missing everything because I hadn't believed in him. The guilt became like a second skin. I wore it every day and it got heavier with every year that passed. Tasha had been quiet for most of the conversation, just listening. Now she spoke, her voice raw but controlled. I need you to understand something, Mama. I'm not ready to forgive you. I might never be ready. What you did keeping him from us when he was alive, lying about how he died, letting us believe a story that wasn't true that took something from me I can't get back. I don't have memories of him. All I have are photographs and letters I just found out existed. I'm 28 years old and I'm grieving a father I never really knew. That's on you. Lorraine flinched, but she nodded. You're right. And I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know the truth before I die. You deserve that much. But, Tasha continued and her voice softened slightly, I read Daddy's last letter. The one he gave to Miss Simone. And he asked us to forgive you. He said you did the best you could with an impossible situation. So even though I'm not ready to forgive you for me, I'm going to try to forgive you for him. Because he loved you and he wouldn't want us to spend whatever time you have left hating each other. Lorraine covered her face with her hands and wept. Brielle moved to kneel beside her mother's chair, putting her arms around her. We're going to get through this, Brielle said. All of it. Your cancer, the truth about Daddy, everything. We're going to face it as a family. I don't deserve you girls, Lorraine whispered. Probably not, Tasha said, but there was the smallest hint of a smile at the corner of her mouth. But you're stuck with us anyway. Miss Simone stood up, preparing to leave. You all need time together. But before I go, I want to say something. Thomas Thompson was one of the best men I ever knew. He deserves to be remembered for who he really was, not the lie that was told about him. You girls should do something to honor his memory. Something that tells the truth about his life. After Miss Simone left, the three Thompson women sat together in the living room where they'd spent countless Sunday dinners, countless holidays, countless ordinary days. But this time felt different. Like something had shifted, some wall had finally come down. What do we do now? Tasha asked. Brielle thought about Camille's words, justice doesn't have an expiration date. She thought about her father's letters, his insistence on his innocence, his fight to clear his name. We clear his name, Brielle said. Legally. Officially. We prove he was innocent, and we make sure everyone knows what really happened to him. How? Lorraine asked. He's been gone for 24 years. Camille's been researching it. There's a process for posthumous exoneration. It won't be easy and it might not work, but we have to try. For him. And for us. Tasha nodded slowly. I teach about civil rights in my classroom. About people who fought for justice even when the system failed them. I'd like to think Daddy was one of those people. I'd like my students to know about him someday. Then let's make it happen, Brielle said. The next morning, Brielle called Camille and told her they wanted to move forward with clearing their father's name. Camille, being Camille, had already started preparing. I've been in touch with the Innocence Initiative, Camille said. They handle cases of wrongful conviction, including posthumous exonerations. They're interested in your father's case, especially since there was a witness who came forward claiming he was framed. The problem is that without the supervisor alive to testify or face charges, it's harder to prove. But we have Leonard Hayes' testimony, and we have your father's consistent claims of innocence. That's a start. What do we need to do? Gather everything. Every letter, every court document, every piece of evidence you can find. I'm going to file a petition for posthumous exoneration with the court. It'll take time, maybe months, maybe longer. But if we can prove your father was wrongly convicted, his record will be cleared. His name will be cleared. Brielle, Tasha, and Lorraine spent the next week gathering everything they could find. They made copies of all the letters. They tracked down Leonard Hayes, who was now retired and living in Florida. He agreed to provide a sworn statement about Richard Hammond's embezzlement scheme and how Thomas Thompson had been framed. They found old co-workers of their fathers who remembered him as honest and hard-working. They found the original trial transcripts and the evidence that had been used to convict him, forged documents that, upon closer examination, showed signs of tampering. And slowly, piece by piece, they built a case for the man Thomas Thompson had really been. During this time, something else was happening. Brielle and Tasha were talking again, really talking, not just surface conversation. They met for coffee twice a week. They shared memories of their childhood, the real memories, not the sanitized versions they'd been telling themselves for years. Do you remember that time Daddy took us to the park and I fell off the swing? Tasha asked one afternoon. They were sitting in a cafe near Tasha's school, surrounded by the noise of other people's lives. I was maybe 3, I think. I remember. You scraped your knee and you were crying so hard. Daddy picked you up and carried you all the way to the car so you wouldn't have to walk on it. I thought I'd made that up. Or that it was Mama's memory, not mine. It was real. He was always doing stuff like that. He'd carry you around on his shoulders until his back hurt, but he never complained. Tasha's eyes filled with tears. I wish I remembered more. Me too. They also visited their mother several times a week, helping her through the brutal rounds of chemotherapy. Lorraine's hair fell out. She lost weight. But she also seemed lighter somehow, as if the truth had released her from a prison she'd been living in for decades. I'm not afraid anymore, Lorraine told them one evening as they sat with her in the hospital during a treatment. I was afraid for so long, afraid of what people would think, afraid you'd hate me, afraid of dying with this secret. But now you know. You know everything and you're still here. You're still my daughters. We're always going to be your daughters, Brielle said. Even when we're angry with you. Even when we don't understand your choices. You're still our mama. I don't deserve you, Lorraine whispered. Yeah, you keep saying that, Tasha said with a small smile. But you're stuck with us anyway. That's what family means. 3 months into the process, Camille called with news. The Innocence Initiative reviewed your father's case. They're taking it on. They believe there's sufficient evidence to support a petition for posthumous exoneration. Brielle felt something break open in her chest, something that had been locked tight for months. Really? Really? It's not a guarantee, but it's a real shot. We're going to court in 6 weeks to present the petition. All of you should be there. The judge needs to see Thomas Thompson's family, needs to understand what this means to you. Brielle called Tasha immediately. Then she drove to her mother's house and told her in person. Lorraine sat down heavily on the couch, her hand over her mouth. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with tears. He's going to be free. After all these years, Tommy's finally going to be free. We don't know that for sure yet, Brielle cautioned. The judge still has to approve it. He will, Lorraine said with certainty. He has to. Because your father was innocent and the truth has to matter. It has to. That night, Brielle lay in bed thinking about justice. About how it could come too late to save someone but still matter anyway. About how clearing her father's name wouldn't bring him back, but it would give him something he'd been denied in life. The truth. She thought about the letter he'd written to her and Tasha, asking them to forgive their mother. He'd known even at the end that holding on to anger would only hurt them. He'd wanted them to be free of it. Maybe that was what justice really meant. Not punishment or revenge, but freedom. Freedom from the weight of lies and secrets and shame. Freedom to remember someone for who they really were. Brielle closed her eyes and for the first time in months, slept without nightmares. 6 weeks felt like both an eternity and no time at all. Brielle worked her shifts at the hospital, helped her mother through increasingly difficult chemo treatments, and spent every free moment with Camille preparing for the court hearing. Dr. Ellis pulled her aside one evening during a quiet moment at the nurse's station. I heard about what you're doing for your father, he said. Fighting for his exoneration. That takes courage. Brielle looked up, surprised. She hadn't told anyone at the hospital except Dana about the situation. How did you know? Dana mentioned it. She thought I should know why you've been so distracted lately. She's worried about you. Dr. Ellis sat down across from her. I lost my father when I was young too. Different circumstances, but the grief is the same. The anger at the unfairness of it all. If you need time off for the hearing, take it. Your patients need you, but you need to be whole to take care of them. And right now, you need to take care of yourself and your family first. Thank you, Brielle said, her throat tight. That means a lot. Your father would be proud of you. Fighting for him like this. Not letting the lie be the final word. Dr. Ellis stood up. Good luck. And let me know if you need anything. After he left, Dana appeared, carrying 2 cups of terrible hospital coffee. Did Dr. Ellis just give you the dad speech? Dana asked, sitting down. Something like that. He's a good man. Lost his father to a medical mistake when he was in college. It's why he became a hospital administrator, wanted to make sure the system protected people instead of failing them. Dana handed Brielle one of the cups. How are you holding up? I don't know. I'm terrified the judge will say no. That we've put Mama through all this hope for nothing. And what if the judge says yes? Brielle had been trying not to think about that. What would it feel like to have her father's name cleared? Would it change anything? Would it make the grief easier or harder? I guess we'll find out, Brielle said. The night before the hearing, Brielle, Tasha, and Lorraine sat together in the living room going over everything one more time. Camille had prepared them for what to expect in court. The judge would hear testimony from Leonard Hayes via video conference. They'd review the evidence, the forged documents, the inconsistencies in the original case, the testimony from co-workers who'd known Thomas Thompson as an honest man. I'm scared, Lorraine admitted. She looked frail, the cancer and treatment aging her in ways that broke Brielle's heart. What if it's not enough? What if the judge decides the evidence isn't strong enough to overturn the conviction? Then we keep fighting, Tasha said firmly. We appeal. We try again. We don't stop until Daddy's name is cleared. That's what he would have done for us. Brielle reached over and took both her mother's and sister's hands. Whatever happens tomorrow, we face it together. We're not alone anymore. We're not carrying this by ourselves. The next morning, they arrived at the courthouse dressed in their best clothes. Brielle wore a navy suit she'd bought for nursing conferences. Tasha wore a professional dress, her hair in a sleek bun. Lorraine wore a cream-colored dress that hung loosely on her diminished frame, but she held her head high. Camille met them outside the courtroom, looking every inch the confident lawyer in her burgundy suit. "Are you ready?" she asked. "No," all three women said at once. Camille smiled. "That's normal. But you've got this. You've got truth on your side, and that's the most powerful thing in any courtroom." They entered the courtroom. It was smaller than Brielle had expected, less dramatic. But the weight of it of what was about to happen pressed down on her chest like a stone. Judge Patricia Monroe entered, an older black woman with gray hair and keen eyes. She looked at the Thompson women with an expression Brielle couldn't quite read, then turned to Camille. "Ms. Richards, you've filed a petition for posthumous exoneration on behalf of Thomas Raymond Thompson, who died in 2001 while serving a sentence for embezzlement. Make your case." Camille stood, and for the next hour she built the story of Thomas Thompson piece by piece. She presented Leonard Hayes's testimony via video conference. Hayes, now 73, looked tired but determined as he told the judge about Richard Hammond's embezzlement scheme and how he'd framed an innocent man. "I should have come forward sooner," Hayes said, his voice heavy with regret. "But Hammond was my supervisor and I was afraid. By the time I found the courage it was too late. Tommy Thompson died thinking nobody believed him. I've carried that guilt for 24 years. The least I can do now is tell the truth." Camille presented the forged documents, pointing out the inconsistencies that should have been caught during the original trial. She presented testimony from 5 of Thomas Thompson's former co-workers, all stating that he'd been honest, hardworking, and had never shown any signs of financial instability or gambling problems. Then Camille presented the letters, dozens of them, written from prison, each one proclaiming his innocence. "Your Honor, Thomas Thompson spent 3 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. He died alone, his reputation destroyed, separated from his family. His daughters grew up believing a lie about how he died because the truth was too painful. Today we're asking this court to do what should have been done 24 years ago, declare Thomas Thompson innocent and restore his name." Judge Monroe listened to everything without interrupting. When Camille finished, the judge turned to Lorraine. "Mrs. Thompson, I understand you were married to the deceased. Is that correct?" Lorraine stood, her legs shaking. "Yes, Your Honor." "Why are you here today? Your husband has been deceased for more than 2 decades. What does this exoneration mean to you?" Lorraine's voice trembled, but she spoke clearly. "It means everything, Your Honor. I failed my husband when he was alive. I didn't believe him. I kept his daughters away from him because I was ashamed. And when he died, I lied about how it happened because I couldn't face what I'd done. But my daughters deserve to know the truth about their father. They deserve to know he was a good man who was wronged by the system. And Tommy deserves to have his name cleared. He deserves for the world to know he was innocent." Judge Monroe nodded. "You may sit down." Then the judge turned to Brielle and Tasha. "And you are the daughters?" They stood together. "Yes, Your Honor," Brielle said. "What do you hope to gain from this exoneration?" Brielle glanced at Tasha, who nodded for her to speak. "I was 8 years old when my father died," Brielle began. "I don't remember him very well. Most of my memories are from before he went to prison. What I remember is his smile, his laugh, the way he called me his little warrior. For 24 years, I believed he died in a car accident. I believed he lived a good life and died quickly. Finding out the truth that he died in prison, wrongly convicted, alone, it broke something in me. But it also gave me something I didn't know I needed. It gave me the real story of who he was. A man who fought for justice. A man who never stopped proclaiming his innocence. A man who loved his family until his last breath." Tears streamed down Brielle's face, but she didn't stop. "My father deserves to be remembered for who he really was. Not as a convict, but as a victim of injustice who never gave up fighting. That's what this exoneration means to me. It means my father finally gets to tell his story. His real story." Tasha spoke next, her voice strong despite the tears. "I was 4 when he died. I don't remember him at all. Everything I know about him came from stories and photographs. For most of my life I was angry that he was gone, angry that I never got to know him. But now I'm angry for different reasons. I'm angry that he was taken from us twice. Once by a corrupt supervisor who framed him, and once by a system that failed to protect him. My father deserves justice. Even if it comes too late to save his life, it's not too late to save his legacy." Judge Monroe listened to all of it, her expression unreadable. When Tasha sat down, the judge spent several minutes reviewing the documents in front of her. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Finally, Judge Monroe spoke. "I've reviewed all the evidence presented today. The testimony of Leonard Hayes, the analysis of the original evidence, the letters written by Thomas Thompson, and the character testimony from his former co-workers. I've also reviewed the original trial transcripts and the investigation that occurred after Mr. Hayes came forward in 2001. She paused, looking directly at the Thompson women. It is clear to me that Thomas Raymond Thompson was the victim of fraud and corruption. The evidence against him was fabricated by his supervisor, Richard Hammond, who used Mr. Thompson as a scapegoat for his own crimes. The original conviction was based on forged documents and false testimony. Had the truth been known at the time, Mr. Thompson would never have been convicted. Brielle felt her heart stop. Beside her, Tasha grabbed her hand. Therefore, Judge Monroe continued, I hereby grant the petition for posthumous exoneration. The criminal record of Thomas Raymond Thompson is expunged. All charges against him are dismissed. The court finds that Mr. Thompson was factually innocent of the crimes for which he was convicted. This ruling will be entered into the official record immediately. The gavel came down. Brielle couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't process what had just happened. We won, Tasha whispered. Brie, we won. Daddy's innocent. Officially innocent. Lorraine collapsed back into her seat, sobbing. Camille leaned over the barrier to hug them, tears streaming down her own face. Your father's name is cleared, Camille said. He's free. Outside the courtroom, the three Thompson women stood together in the sunlight. Brielle felt like she was floating, like the weight she'd been carrying for months had finally lifted. What do we do now? Tasha asked. Brielle looked at her mother and sister. They'd been through so much grief, anger, betrayal, cancer, fear. But they'd come through it together. They'd fought for the truth and the truth had won. Now, Brielle said, we tell everyone who Daddy really was. We make sure his story is told the right way. And we live our lives in a way that would make him proud. Lorraine reached out and took both her daughter's hands. He's already proud of you. I know he is. You fought for him when I didn't. You believed in him when I didn't. You gave him back his name. We all did it together, Brielle said. As a family. And for the first time in 24 years, that word family felt true again. The weeks following the exoneration felt like living in a dream. The local news picked up the story, man wrongfully convicted, exonerated 24 years after death. Some of Thomas Thompson's old friends and co-workers reached out, sharing memories and offering condolences. But the most surprising call came from Thomas's old construction company, now under new management. Miss Thompson? The voice on the phone was professional, careful. My name is Angela Martinez. I'm the current CEO of Hammond Construction, though we've rebranded as Martinez Building Group since the scandal. I heard about your father's exoneration, and I wanted to reach out personally. Brielle switched the phone to speaker so Tasha and Lorraine, who were visiting, could hear. I've been going through old company records since the news broke, Angela continued. Your father was set up by my predecessor. The company shares responsibility for what happened to him. I'd like to make it right, or at least try to. We'd like to issue a public apology and offer financial compensation to your family. It won't bring your father back, but it's something. The three women looked at each other, speechless. We also want to rename one of our community initiatives after him, Angela added. We have a scholarship program for young people pursuing careers in the trades. We'd like to call it the Thomas Thompson Memorial Scholarship. If you'll allow it. Lorraine's hand went to her mouth. He would have loved that. Tommy always believed in young people and giving them opportunities. Then we'll make it happen. And Miss Thompson, I'm truly sorry. For what my predecessor did, for what the company failed to prevent. Your father deserved better. After the call ended, the three women sat in silence for a long moment. Daddy's going to have a scholarship in his name, Tasha said, wonder in her voice. Kids are going to learn and grow because of him. That's more than a cleared name, Brielle said. That's a legacy. But there was something else they needed to do. Something more personal. We need to have a real funeral, Lorraine said quietly. He deserves a proper burial with people who loved him there. With the truth spoken about his life. Where is he buried now? Tasha asked. Lorraine's face tightened with old shame. In the prison cemetery. I never had him moved because I couldn't face explaining to people why he died there. But now, she looked at her daughters. Now we can bring him home. We can bury him properly with dignity. The process of having Thomas Thompson's remains exhumed and transferred took 3 weeks. During that time, Brielle, Tasha, and Lorraine planned a memorial service. They decided to hold it at the same church where their parents had been married 35 years ago. The same church where a funeral had been held 24 years earlier, based on lies. This time they would tell the truth. They invited everyone, family, friends, old coworkers, neighbors. They invited Leonard Hayes, who flew in from Florida. They invited Angela Martinez from the construction company. They invited Camille, who'd fought so hard for the exoneration. They invited Miss Simone, who'd kept their father's letter all those years. Dr. Ellis and Dana from the hospital came too, showing support for Brielle. Even some of Tasha's fellow teachers came, having heard the story and wanting to honor a man who'd been wronged. The day of the memorial was sunny and warm, the kind of day that felt like a blessing. The church was full, standing room only. Brielle stood at the front, looking at all the people who'd come to honor her father, and felt overwhelming gratitude. The service began with music, gospel hymns their father had loved. Then the pastor, who'd known Thomas Thompson years ago, spoke. Today we celebrate the life of a man who was taken from us too soon. A man who fought for justice and died before he could see it. Thomas Thompson was a son, a husband, a father, a friend, and a victim of injustice. But more than any of that, he was a good man. A man of integrity even when the world told him he had none. Today we correct the lie that was told about his death. Today we tell the truth. Brielle spoke next, her voice steady despite the tears. My father died when I was 8 years old. For 24 years I believed a lie about how he died. But lies don't just hurt in the moment they're told. They hurt across generations. They steal not just from the person they're about, but from everyone who loved that person. My father was stolen from my sister and me twice, once by a corrupt system, and once by a lie meant to protect us. But we don't need protection from the truth. We need the truth so we can heal. So we can know who we came from. So we can honor his memory the right way. She looked at the photograph they'd placed at the front of the church, her father at 30, smiling, holding baby Brielle. Daddy, you fought until your last breath to prove your innocence. It took us 24 years, but we finished the fight for you. Your name is clear. Your story is told. And every scholarship given in your name, every young person who learns a trade because of you, every person who hears your story and fights against injustice because of it, that's your legacy. That's you living on. Tasha spoke next, her voice thick with emotion. I don't remember my father. I was 4 when he died. But I've learned more about him in the past few months than I knew in 28 years of life. I've learned that he was brave. That he stood up against corruption even when it cost him everything. That he loved his daughters so much that even from prison, even facing death, he wrote letters asking us to love each other and forgive. That's the kind of man he was. And I'm proud to be his daughter. Then, to everyone's surprise, Lorraine stood up. She walked slowly to the front of the church, leaning on a cane. The cancer was taking its toll, but her voice was strong when she spoke. I owe my husband an apology, she began. An apology I should have given him 24 years ago, but he died before I could. Tommy, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. I'm sorry I kept your daughters away from you. I'm sorry you died alone, thinking I'd abandoned you. I was wrong. I was scared and proud and weak, and I made choices I can't take back. But our daughters, these beautiful, strong, fierce women, they're your legacy. They fought for you when I didn't. They believed in you when I didn't. They gave you back your name. I hope somehow you know. I hope somehow you can forgive me. She looked at the photograph, tears streaming down her face. I loved you. I never stopped loving you. And I'm sorry it took me so long to say that out loud. There wasn't a dry eye in the church. Leonard Hayes spoke next, his voice heavy with regret. I should have come forward sooner. I should have stood up to Hammond before Tommy was convicted. I was a coward, and an innocent man paid the price. I've lived with that for 24 years. I hope this exoneration, this memorial, gives Tommy some of the justice he deserved. And I hope his daughters can forgive me for not being brave enough to tell the truth when it would have saved their father's life. Miss Simone spoke about the man she'd known as a neighbor and friend. Co-workers shared stories of his work ethic, his kindness, his integrity. Angela Martinez apologized on behalf of the company and announced the scholarship program. By the end, everyone in that church knew exactly who Thomas Thompson had been. A good man caught in a bad situation, a father who'd loved his daughters until his last breath, a victim of injustice who'd never stopped fighting. After the service, they buried Thomas Thompson properly, in a plot next to where his wife would eventually rest. The headstone they'd chosen was simple but powerful. Thomas Raymond Thompson, 1968 to 2001, beloved father and husband, wrongly convicted. Rightfully exonerated, justice delayed is not justice denied. As they stood at the graveside, Brielle felt Tasha take her hand on one side and her mother take her hand on the other. They stood together, 3 generations of Thompson women, finally at peace. We did it, Daddy, Brielle whispered. We brought you home. That evening, the family gathered at Lorraine's house. What felt like the entire church congregation had come, bringing food and stories and love. It was the first time Brielle could remember the house feeling full of joy instead of shadows. Miss Simone found Brielle in the kitchen, helping to organize the overwhelming amount of food. "Your father would be so proud," Miss Simone said. "Of all of you. You took something terrible and found a way to make it right." "It's not completely right," Brielle said. "He's still gone. We still lost all those years with him." "That's true. But you made sure he didn't die in vain. You made sure his story was told the right way. That matters more than you know." Later, as the crowd thinned and the evening settled into comfortable conversation, Brielle found herself sitting on the front porch with Tasha, just like they used to do as children. "Do you think Daddy knows?" Tasha asked. "About the exoneration, the memorial, all of it?" "I don't know," Brielle said honestly. "But I hope so. I hope somehow he knows we fought for him. That we never gave up." "I'm proud of us," Tasha said. "For not letting the lie be the final word. For demanding the truth even when it hurt." "Me too." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the neighborhood their father had once walked through, the streets he'd once called home. "I'm moving back," Tasha said suddenly. "I put in for a transfer to a school closer to Mama's house. I want to be here with her and you for whatever time she has left. We've spent too long apart. I don't want to waste any more time." Brielle felt tears spring to her eyes. "She'll be so happy. We all will be. Family," Tasha said softly. "That's what Daddy wanted. For us to be a family. To love each other and take care of each other. I think we owe him that much." "Yeah," Brielle agreed. "We do." Inside, through the window, they could see their mother laughing at something someone had said. Despite the cancer, despite the weight she'd lost and the exhaustion that never left her eyes, she looked lighter. Free. The truth had set all of them free. Autumn came, painting the trees in shades of gold and rust. Lorraine's cancer treatments continued, and while the doctors remained cautiously optimistic, everyone knew they were fighting a battle they might not win. But the difference now was that they were fighting it together. True to her word, Tasha had transferred to a school 15 minutes from their mother's house. She'd found a new apartment nearby, and at least 3 nights a week, the 3 Thompson women shared dinner together. Sometimes they talked about heavy things: Lorraine's prognosis, their father's memory, the years of lies and hurt. But more often they talked about ordinary things. Tasha's funny 3rd graders. Brielle's difficult patients. Lorraine's garden, which she'd taken up as a hobby during her good days. They were learning to be a family again. Learning to trust each other. Learning that forgiveness wasn't a single moment but a choice made over and over, day after day. One evening in October, Brielle arrived at her mother's house for dinner to find a surprise visitor. Her grandmother, Ruby Lee Thompson. She was Lorraine's mother, and Brielle hadn't seen her in nearly 2 years. The relationship had been strained since Lorraine's cancer diagnosis, for reasons Brielle had never fully understood. "Grandma Ruby?" Brielle said, surprised. The older woman stood up from the couch, moving slowly. At 82, she was still sharp-minded but physically frail. "Hello, baby," Ruby Lee said, pulling Brielle into a hug. "I heard what you girls did for your father. I had to come see you." Over dinner, Ruby Lee told them why she'd been distant. "When Tommy was arrested," she began, her voice steady but sad, "I told your mama to stand by him. I told her that an innocent man needs his wife more than ever. But she was so scared, so ashamed. We fought about it. I said terrible things to her. Told her she was betraying her husband, betraying her vows." Lorraine looked down at her plate. "You were right, Mama?" "No, I wasn't. Not entirely." Ruby Lee reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. "I was right that Tommy deserved support. But I was wrong to judge you so harshly. You were 26 years old with 2 babies and a husband in prison. You were terrified and alone. I should have helped you carry that burden instead of adding to it with my judgment. I made the wrong choices," Lorraine said. "You made human choices. And when I heard about the lie you told about his death, I was so angry. I stopped coming around. I blamed you for everything, for not believing Tommy, for keeping those girls from their father, for lying about how he died. I let my anger poison our relationship. And then when you got sick, I was too proud to reach out. Too ashamed of how I'd treated you." Ruby Lee's eyes filled with tears. "But when I heard about the exoneration, about how these girls fought to clear their father's name, I realized something. They learned that strength from somewhere. They learned that persistence, that refusal to accept injustice. They learned it from you, Lorraine. Because even though you made mistakes, you raised 2 incredible women. And in the end, you told them the truth, even knowing it might destroy your relationship with them. That took courage I'm not sure I would have had. Lorraine was crying now. Mama, I'm so sorry. For all the years we lost for... No. Ruby Lee squeezed her hand. I'm sorry. I should have been here for you. Should have been here for my granddaughters. But I'm here now and I'm not leaving again. However much time you have left, I want to spend it with you. With all of you. Tasha, who had been quiet throughout the dinner, spoke up. Family shouldn't be something we only come together for when there's a crisis. We should be there for each other on the ordinary days too. You're right, Ruby Lee said. So let's make a promise, all of us. No more letting pride or anger or shame keep us apart. Life's too short and family's too important. They held hands around the table for generations of Thompson women, including Brielle and Tasha representing the youngest generation, making a promise to stay connected no matter what. After dinner, Brielle and Ruby Lee sat together on the porch while Tasha and Lorraine cleaned up inside. Tell me about him, Ruby Lee said. Your father. I know you don't remember much, but tell me what you've learned. So Brielle did. She told her grandmother about the letters, about the evidence that proved his innocence, about the memorial service and the scholarship in his name. She told her about how he'd asked them to forgive their mother, even when he had every right to be angry. He was always like that, Ruby Lee said with a sad smile. Even as a young man courting your mama, he had this kindness about him. This belief that people were basically good, that the system would work the way it was supposed to. That belief got him killed. Maybe, Brielle said. But it also inspired us to fight for him. If he'd been bitter and angry, if he'd spent his last years hating everyone, we might not have fought so hard. But his letters were full of love. Even in prison, even dying, he was asking us to love each other. That's powerful. Yes, Ruby Lee agreed. That's more powerful than anger could ever be. The weeks continued. Brielle picked up extra shifts at the hospital to help pay for some of Lorraine's medical expenses. Dr. Ellis had quietly arranged for the hospital's charity fund to help, though he'd sworn Dana and Brielle to secrecy about his personal contribution. Your father fought for what was right, Dr. Ellis had said when Brielle tried to thank him. The least I can do is help his family. Consider it my small contribution to justice. Dana had become more than a colleague, she was a true friend. She often came over to Brielle's apartment after their shifts, and they'd talk about everything: work, family, the weight of carrying other people's pain. My dad's parole hearing is coming up, Dana mentioned one evening. First time in 12 years he's even been eligible. Are you going? Dana nodded. Yeah. My mom and I are going to speak on his behalf. He made a mistake, a terrible one, but he served his time. He deserves a second chance. Your dad's lucky to have you, Brielle said. I don't know about that. For years I was so angry with him. So ashamed. But watching what you did for your father, fighting for his justice even though he's been gone for decades, it made me think. My dad's alive. He's still here. Maybe it's time I stopped punishing him and started forgiving him. Forgiveness isn't forgetting, Brielle said. It's just choosing not to let the hurt define you anymore. Yeah, Dana said softly. I'm starting to understand that. In November, Brielle received a call from Angela Martinez at the construction company. We're ready to present the first Thomas Thompson Memorial Scholarship, Angela said. We're awarding it to a young woman named Destiny Crawford. She's 18, graduating from a vocational technical school, and wants to become an electrician. We'd love for you and your family to be there when we present it to her. The presentation was held at the company's headquarters. Destiny Crawford was a bright-eyed young woman with a determined smile. When she learned the scholarship was named after Brielle's father, she asked to speak with them. My dad's in prison too, Destiny said quietly. He's been there since I was 10. Everybody looks at me different when they find out. Like I'm less than. Like I'm going to end up like him. But this scholarship, knowing it's named after someone who was wrongly accused, who fought for justice, it means I'm not just the girl with the dad in prison. I'm the girl who's going to make something of herself despite everything. Brielle hugged her tightly. You already are something. And your father's mistakes don't define you. Your choices define you. That's what my mama says. Destiny wiped her eyes. Thank you. For fighting for your dad. For making sure his story was told right. It gives people like me hope. After the presentation, as they drove home, Tasha said, Daddy's helping people. Even now, even gone, he's helping people. That's more than most people leave behind. He left behind us, Lorraine said from the back seat. 3 strong women who know how to fight for what's right. That's the best legacy anyone could ask for. That night, Brielle lay in bed thinking about legacy. About how the things we do ripple forward in ways we can't predict. Her father had died in prison, wrongly convicted, but his story was inspiring young people to fight for justice. His love for his daughters had taught them to fight for truth even when it hurt. His faith in the goodness of people, despite everything, had shown them how to forgive. Maybe that was what justice really looked like. Not just clearing a name but changing lives. Not just winning in court but winning hearts. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. December brought cold weather and a renewed sense of urgency. Lorraine's latest scan showed the cancer was spreading despite treatment. The doctors gave her 4 to 6 months, maybe less. Instead of falling apart, Lorraine became more determined to make the most of whatever time she had left. "I'm not spending my last months in a hospital," she announced at Sunday dinner. "I want to be home with my family doing things I love. Quality over quantity." Mama Brielle started. "No arguments. I've made my peace with this. I'm ready." Lorraine looked at her daughters with clear eyes. "But before I go, there are some things I need to do." She'd made a list, she told them. A bucket list of sorts, but more focused. Things she wanted to say, people she wanted to see, ways she wanted to make amends. "I want to visit Tommy's grave every week," she said. "I want to talk to him, tell him about you girls, about how proud I am. I want him to hear it from me even if he can't respond." Every Sunday they went together, Brielle, Tasha, and Lorraine, to the cemetery. They'd bring flowers and sit by the gravestone, talking to Thomas Thompson like he was right there with them. Lorraine told him about Brielle's promotion at the hospital. She'd been offered a position as nurse supervisor, a recognition of her years of dedication. She told him about Tasha's classroom, how she was teaching her third graders about civil rights heroes, including their own father. She told him about the scholarship that bore his name, about Destiny Crawford and the other young people who would benefit from it. "I'm sorry it took so long, Tommy," Lorraine said one Sunday, her hand resting on the cold stone. "Sorry I didn't fight for you when you were alive. But our girls, they're fighters. They got that from you. They're going to change the world just like you hoped they would." Lorraine also wanted to speak to Leonard Hayes. Camille arranged a video call, and Brielle and Tasha sat with their mother as she faced the man who could have saved their father. "Mr. Hayes," Lorraine began, "I want you to know I forgive you. You were scared and you made a mistake. But you eventually told the truth, and that truth helped give my girls closure. That means something." Hayes, who looked like he'd aged 20 years since the trial, broke down crying. "Thank you. I've been carrying this guilt for so long. I don't know if I deserve your forgiveness." "None of us deserve the grace we're given," Lorraine said gently. "But we accept it anyway and we try to do better. That's all any of us can do." In January, on what would have been Thomas Thompson's 57th birthday, the family held a celebration at the church. They invited everyone who'd been part of the journey: Camille, Miss Simone, Dr. Ellis, Dana, Ruby Lee, Leonard Hayes, Angela Martinez, even Destiny Crawford and the other scholarship recipients. They celebrated not his death but his life. They shared stories, looked at photographs, and talked about the impact he'd had on all of them. Brielle stood at the front of the room and made an announcement. "My sister and I have decided to write a book," she said. "About our father's story. About wrongful convictions, about family secrets, about justice and forgiveness. We want his story to reach beyond our community. We want other families who've been torn apart by injustice to know they're not alone." The room erupted in applause. Camille was already working with a publisher who'd expressed interest. It would take time, but they were committed to telling the story right. But the most important conversation came on a quiet evening in February. Lorraine called both her daughters over. She was in bed now more than she was up, but her mind was still sharp. "I need to tell you something," she said. "Something I should have told you years ago." Brielle and Tasha exchanged worried glances. "What other secrets could there be?" "After your father died, I got a settlement from the state," Lorraine said. "Not much, but something. I was supposed to tell you about it when you turned 18, but I didn't. I kept it, saved it, invested it. It's grown over the years. I've put it all in a trust for both of you." "Mama, we don't care about money," Tasha said. "I know. But I want you to have it anyway. Use it for something good. Maybe to help other families fighting wrongful convictions. Maybe to expand the scholarship fund in your father's name. Whatever you choose, I know it'll be the right thing." "Why didn't you tell us before?" Brielle asked. "Because I was ashamed of how I got it. It was compensation for your father's wrongful death, and I felt like I didn't deserve it. I'd failed him, so why should I benefit from his suffering?" Lorraine's eyes filled with tears. "But I realize now that hiding it was just another lie. Another secret that ate at me. So I'm telling you now, and I'm letting it go." The next day, Brielle and Tasha met with Lorraine's lawyer to learn about the trust. It was more than they'd expected, nearly $200,000, grown from the original settlement through careful investment. "We should use it to create a foundation," Tasha said. "The Thomas Thompson Justice Foundation. We can help families fighting wrongful convictions. Give them access to lawyers, investigators, emotional support. And we can fund more scholarships," Brielle added. "Not just in construction but in all the trades. Help young people build better futures." They brought the idea to their mother, and for the first time in months, Lorraine's face lit up with pure joy. "Yes. Oh yes. That's perfect. Tommy would have loved that." She gripped their hands weakly. "You girls are going to do so much good. I'm so proud of you." Over the next few weeks, they set up the foundation with Camille's help. By March, they'd already helped 3 families fighting wrongful convictions, connecting them with lawyers and resources they couldn't afford on their own. The book was coming together too. Brielle and Tasha worked on it during their free time, with Camille helping to structure the legal aspects. They interviewed Leonard Hayes, Angela Martinez, Miss Simone, and others who'd been part of the journey. They poured their hearts onto the page, determined to honor their father's memory and help others facing similar injustice. But even as good things were happening, Lorraine was fading. By late March, she was on hospice care, surrounded by her daughters, her mother, and her closest friends. One evening, as Brielle sat beside her mother's bed, Lorraine reached out and took her hand. "I need to tell you something," Lorraine whispered. "Something important." "What is it, Mama?" "I'm not afraid anymore. For years I was afraid of dying, of judgment, of what comes next. But I'm not afraid now, because I know I did the right thing in the end. I told you the truth. I helped clear Tommy's name. I've made my peace." "We're not ready to let you go," Brielle said, tears streaming down her face. "I know. But baby, you don't need me anymore. You and Tasha, you're strong. You're going to be okay. You're going to do amazing things." Lorraine's breathing was labored, but her eyes were clear. "Take care of each other. Love each other. Keep telling your father's story. Keep fighting for what's right. That's my legacy, not the lie I told, but the truth you revealed. We will, Mama. I promise." That night, surrounded by her daughters, her mother, and Miss Simone, Lorraine Thompson closed her eyes and slipped away peacefully. The funeral was well attended. They buried her next to Thomas, just as she'd wanted. The headstone read, "Lorraine Marie Thompson, 1967 to 2026, beloved mother and daughter, she learned to choose truth over comfort, rest in peace." Standing at the graveside, Brielle and Tasha held hands, their grandmother Ruby Lee between them. "We're going to be okay," Tasha said. "It hurts, but we're going to be okay." "Yeah," Brielle agreed. "We are." Because they'd learned something important over the past year. Family wasn't about perfection. It was about truth, forgiveness, and choosing to stand together even when it was hard. It was about fighting for justice even when justice came too late to save the ones you loved. It was about turning pain into purpose and grief into something meaningful. Their parents were gone, but their legacy lived on. In the foundation that bore their father's name. In the book that would tell his story. In the young people who would benefit from scholarships and support. In the families fighting wrongful convictions who would find help and hope. And in 2 sisters who'd learned that the truth might hurt, but lies hurt more. That forgiveness was a gift you gave yourself as much as anyone else. That love was stronger than shame, and justice was worth fighting for even when the fight was hard. As they walked away from the graves, Brielle felt a strange sense of peace. Her parents were together again at last. And she and Tasha would carry forward everything they'd learned, everything they'd fought for. The story wasn't over. It was just beginning. 1 year later, Brielle stood at the podium in the same church where they'd held both memorials for her parents. But today wasn't about grief. Today was about celebration. The sanctuary was packed with people who'd come to celebrate the first anniversary of the Thomas Thompson Justice Foundation and the launch of the book, Truth Delayed: One Family's Fight for Justice. Tasha sat in the front row next to Grandma Ruby Lee, who at 83 was still sharp and present for every important family moment. Camille was there too, along with Dana and Dr. Ellis from the hospital. Miss Simone sat with several of her church friends. Leonard Hayes had flown in from Florida. Angela Martinez was there with a group from the construction company. And scattered throughout the crowd were faces that had become familiar over the past year, families the foundation had helped, scholarship recipients, people who'd heard their story and wanted to support the work. Brielle took a breath and began. "A little over a year ago, my mother called me at 2 in the morning and told me a truth that shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. She told me my father didn't die in a car accident. She told me he died in prison, wrongly convicted of a crime he didn't commit. She told me she'd lied to my sister and me for 24 years because she was ashamed and afraid. The room was silent, everyone listening. I was angry. I was hurt. I didn't know how we'd ever recover from that kind of betrayal. But what I learned over the next year changed everything. I learned that truth, no matter how painful, is always better than a comfortable lie. I learned that forgiveness isn't something you give once but something you choose every day. I learned that justice matters, even when it comes too late to save the person you're fighting for. And I learned that real family is built not on perfection, but on choosing to love each other through the imperfect moments. She looked at Tasha, who smiled encouragingly. My father, Thomas Thompson, spent 3 years in prison proclaiming his innocence. He died there alone, branded a criminal. But 24 years later, a judge declared him innocent. His name was cleared. And now, his legacy is helping others who've been caught in the same broken system. Brielle gestured to a screen behind her, which showed statistics. 5 families assisted by the foundation in the past year. 3 wrongful conviction cases currently in progress. 15 scholarship recipients. 1 book published with proceeds funding the foundation's work. When Brielle finished speaking, Tasha came to the podium. I was 4 years old when my father died, she began. I don't remember him. But thanks to his letters, thanks to the people who knew him, and thanks to the fight my family waged to clear his name, I know exactly who he was. He was a man of integrity. A man who believed in justice even when justice failed him. A man who loved his daughters so much that his last words were asking us to love and forgive. That's who I'm teaching my students about when we study civil rights and justice. That's who I'm honoring every day of my life. She paused, her voice catching with emotion. My mother made mistakes. Big ones. But in the end, she chose truth over comfort. She told us what really happened, even knowing it might destroy our relationship with her. She helped us fight for Daddy's exoneration. And in her last months, she used everything she had to help us build something that would outlast all of us. So today we celebrate both our parents. Their mistakes, their courage, and their love. The crowd applauded, many wiping tears from their eyes. After the formal presentations, there was a reception. People lined up to talk to Brielle and Tasha, to share their own stories of wrongful conviction, of family secrets, of fighting for justice. This isn't just about my father anymore. It's about every person who's been wrongfully accused. Every family torn apart by a broken system. Every young person who deserves a chance despite the circumstances they were born into. That's what the Thomas Thompson Justice Foundation is fighting for. Against impossible odds. A woman named Patricia approached, holding the hand of a teenage boy. My son was wrongly accused of robbery, she said. He spent 2 years in juvenile detention before the real culprit was caught. Your foundation helped us get him therapy, helped him get back in school. He's graduating high school next month. I just wanted to say thank you. The boy, who couldn't have been more than 17, looked at Brielle with serious eyes. I want to be a lawyer now. I want to help other kids like me. Your dad's story showed me that even when the system fails you, you can still fight back. Brielle hugged them both, overwhelmed with gratitude. Destiny Crawford, now in her 2nd year of trade school, came up with a friend. This is Janae, Destiny said. She just got the Thomas Thompson Scholarship for next year. She's going to study welding. Janae, a shy girl who looked about 19, smiled. My father made mistakes. He's in prison and he'll be there for a long time. But I'm not going to let that define me. This scholarship is helping me build a future. Thank you. Throughout the afternoon, story after story emerged. People whose lives had been touched by the foundation, by the book, by the simple act of one family refusing to let injustice have the final word. As the event wound down, Brielle found herself standing in front of the memorial display. They'd set up photographs of Thomas and Lorraine Thompson, copies of the letters her father had written, the court documents from his exoneration, and the front cover of their book. Camille came to stand beside her. You did it, Camille said. You took something painful and turned it into something beautiful. We did it, Brielle corrected. All of us. You, me, Tasha, Mama. Even Daddy in his own way. He started this fight. We just finished it. He'd be proud. I hope so. That evening, after everyone had left, Brielle and Tasha drove to the cemetery. It was something they did every few weeks, visiting their parents' graves, updating them on what was happening, sharing the victories and the struggles. They sat on the grass between the 2 headstones, the evening sun casting long shadows. We got another case today, Tasha said. A man in Mississippi convicted of armed robbery 15 years ago. His daughter reached out. She says he's innocent, that he was misidentified. Camille's reviewing the case now. How old is the daughter? Brielle asked. 23. She was 8 when he was convicted. Same age you were when Daddy went to prison. They sat in silence for a moment, both thinking about the cycles of injustice, the way some stories repeated across generations. We can't save everyone, Brielle said finally. But we can try to save some. That's enough, Tasha said. It has to be enough. Brielle looked at her father's headstone, then her mother's. Both gone, but somehow more present now than they'd been in years. I forgive you, Mama, Brielle said softly. I forgive you for lying. For being scared. For not being perfect. I forgive you because holding on to anger would only hurt me, and I'm choosing not to hurt anymore. Me too, Tasha added. I forgive you. And Daddy, if you can hear us, we did it. We cleared your name. We're helping people because of you. Your story matters. You mattered. A breeze rustled through the trees, and for a moment, Brielle could almost believe it was her parents' way of saying they heard, they understood, they were at peace. As they drove home, Tasha reached over and took Brielle's hand. Thank you, she said. For not giving up on our family. For fighting even when I wanted to run away. For believing we could make something good out of something terrible. We're sisters, Brielle said simply. That's what we do. We fight for each other. 3 months later, Brielle got a call from the Mississippi daughter. Camille had found new evidence. The case was being reopened. There was a real chance for exoneration. You gave me hope, the daughter said, crying on the phone. When I read your book, when I learned about your foundation, I realized I didn't have to accept the injustice. I could fight back. Thank you for showing me how. 6 months after that, Brielle was promoted to Director of Nursing at Mercy General. Dr. Ellis had recommended her personally, citing her dedication, her compassion, and her commitment to fighting for what was right even when it was hard. You learned from your father, Dr. Ellis told her. How to stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves. That's what good nursing is about. That's what good leadership is about. Tasha was thriving too. She'd started a social justice curriculum in her school, teaching third graders about civil rights, wrongful convictions, and the importance of speaking truth to power. She used her father's story as a teaching tool, and her students wrote letters to people who'd been wrongfully convicted, offering encouragement and hope. Your daddy would be so proud, Grandma Ruby Lee said at Sunday dinner one evening. It had become a tradition every Sunday. The family gathered at what used to be Lorraine's house but now belonged to both sisters. They kept it, unable to let go of the place that held so many memories. I think he'd be proud of all of us, Brielle said. For not letting the pain break us. For choosing love over bitterness. For fighting for justice even when it's hard. That's the Thompson way, Ruby Lee said with a smile. We fight. We love. We don't give up. 2 years after the exoneration, the Thomas Thompson Justice Foundation had grown beyond what any of them had imagined. They'd helped overturn 6 wrongful convictions. They'd provided 30 scholarships. They'd supported dozens of families fighting for justice. The book had been translated into 3 languages and was being taught in criminal justice classes across the country. But more than the numbers, more than the public success, was the private transformation. Brielle and Tasha were closer than they'd ever been. They'd learned to trust each other, to communicate honestly, to choose each other even when it was hard. They'd learned that family wasn't about being perfect, but about being present. About showing up even when it hurt. On what would have been their father's 60th birthday, they held a celebration at the church. Hundreds of people came, families they'd helped, scholarship recipients, supporters of the foundation, and people who'd simply been moved by the story. Brielle stood at the podium one more time, looking out at all the faces. Lives changed. Futures transformed. Justice delayed but not denied. My father died 30 years ago, she said. But his story, his fight, his love, his refusal to give up, that story is still changing lives. That story is still fighting for justice. And as long as we're here, as long as we're telling it, he's not really gone. He lives on in every person we help. Every family we support. Every young person who gets a chance to build a better future. She looked at Tasha, who smiled through tears. That's what love does. It outlasts death. It outlasts injustice. It outlasts everything. And that's what our parents taught us in the end. Not how to be perfect, but how to love imperfectly and fight anyway. How to tell the truth even when it hurts. How to forgive even when it's hard. How to build something beautiful out of something broken. The crowd stood applauding. But Brielle wasn't finished. We've received a grant, she announced. A major grant from a civil rights organization. It's going to allow us to expand the foundation nationally, to help even more families, to fund even more scholarships, to fight even more wrongful convictions. The work is just beginning. As the applause continued, Brielle felt her father's presence like a warm hand on her shoulder, felt her mother's love like a gentle embrace. They were gone, but they weren't lost. They lived on in the work, in the love, in the justice that continued to ripple forward. That evening, as the sun set over Atlanta, Brielle and Tasha stood together in their parents' backyard, the same yard where they'd played as children. "We did it, Daddy," Brielle whispered to the sky. "We finished your fight. We cleared your name. We made sure everyone knows who you really were. And we're not stopping," Tasha added. "Your story is helping people. Your legacy is growing. You're changing the world even now." The sisters stood together in the gathering darkness, holding hands the way they had as children. They'd been through fire, grief, betrayal, anger, loss. But they'd come through it stronger, more united, more committed to fighting for what was right. Their parents' story had ended. But their story, the story of two sisters who refused to let injustice have the final word, was just beginning. And as long as they were alive, as long as they were fighting, their father's voice would continue to echo, "Be better than this situation. Be better than me." They were. They had been. And they would continue to be. Because that's what love demanded. That's what justice required. That's what family meant. Truth, forgiveness, hope. And above all, the courage to keep fighting when everything in you wants to give up. That was the Thompson legacy. And it would live on long after they were gone.